I understand what you mean, because the easiest thing for the Labour Party, or any party to do, would be to pick one side or the other. Then at least we'd have a body of people who agree with us on everything in relation to this issue, whether it be Leavers or Remainers. So I think the Labour Party has picked a difficult road, a road whereby we can be kicked from both sides.
You might be punished.
Yeah, but it's the right thing to do. I think it's the most difficult road, but it's the right road to take for the country as well, because we want to end this divide. Most people don't classify themselves primarily as being Leavers or Remainers, however strongly they feel about this issue. We want to end this divide in society and bring people together. It's a tough thing to do, but it's the right thing to do.
But even if you get absolutely drubbed in the polls and you do very badly in these European elections, will it still have been the right thing to do?
I think it is the right thing to do, and I don't think, by the way, that we're going to get
Well, predictions
drubbed.
a difficult game in politics.
It is
But I suppose, just to quote Mary Cray, the Labour MP, she says, if Labour stands in the middle of the road on Brexit, we'll get run over from both directions.
That's true. It's a difficult position we've taken, but it's the right thing to do, because whether people live in Huddersfield and voted to leave, or live in Hackney and voted to remain, they're both facing the problems of austerity, 9 years now of Conservative austerity, of cuts, of the housing crisis, of insecure, unstable
but before
employment.
all of that, we're not having any legislation at the moment. It's a zombie parliament. They need a solution to get around for Brexit.
The reality is we don't have a real government. It's like a zombie government. It's almost as if Theresa May
Why are you getting in
isn't
bed with them and
around
doing these talks for the last 5 weeks?
No, it was right that we entered into these talks, and it's right that we're still part of them, because we want to bring people together. We want to see it as a traditional British compromise, because most people I speak to, both in my own constituency when I'm campaigning across the country, actually just want this over and done with. They want a traditional British compromise.
But they also want to be able to vote for a Labour Party where they know what the solution is going to be on Brexit. They don't want you in the middle of the road. They want to know. So let me ask you clearly, is Labour the party to stop Brexit?
The Labour Party doesn't exist to stop Brexit. Other parties have been formed that think that is their only purpose politically.
But the Labour MEP candidate, Lord Adonis, just to say, has said that's what you need to do. In these European elections, vote for Labour and we will stop Brexit.
I think he's corrected himself since then. But the Labour Party exists to bring people together, because we know that the real divide in this country isn't between whether people voted leave or whether they voted remain. It's actually the real divide is whether they're part of the 99% or the 1%. The 99% of people who are getting a rotten deal under this rotten system, whether we're in the EU or outside of the EU. And I think that Labour is well placed to showcase our values to the country in these elections, which nobody really expected to be having to take place, because a vote for Labour in these elections is a vote against scapegoating migrants, a vote...
So you're happy to fudge it?
It's not about a fudge.
Well, that's what you've just admitted. You're saying it's a risk to be in the middle like this.
It is a risk. It's a hard road, but it's the right thing to do. And what people really need, from their politicians now, is people seeking to heal divides, not people seeking to expand divides for their narrow political advantage.
5 weeks into these talks then with the Conservatives, John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, said at the weekend he doesn't trust the Prime Minister due to leaks around this. The Prime Minister has said, and her team, they don't want to stay in a customs union like Labour wants. When are you going to actually walk away from these talks?
Well, we're not going to walk away from these talks lightly, because we didn't enter into these talks lightly.
I know, but 5 weeks in.
But I, for example, and many others, are getting more and more concerned that actually negotiating with this Prime Minister isn't as straightforward as some might hope, because she's actually negotiating with her own side continually, and all the time there's new candidates for Conservative Prime Minister popping up left, right and centre.
Yeah, but you look like you're propping up this government more
We're not
and
propping
more.
up this.
So how long are you going to give it? Could you answer that? Is there a game plan?
We want to see an end to this government
but
as soon as
5 weeks
possible.
in,
that's why we're calling for a general election.
How much longer are you going to give it 5 weeks in?
Well, the negotiating team are taking it very seriously, but now it's time, 5 weeks in, as you say, for Theresa May to come forward and say she's actually dumping some of these red lines, and that she's not actually just trying to string along not only our Parliament, but the British public in an attempt to hold on to power for a few more weeks or even a few more days.
So you're going to keep going with them until she walks away? That's what it sounds like.
No, we're taking part in these negotiations in a responsible way. If it becomes fundamentally clear that it's become a waste of time because of Theresa May's behaviour and the Tories competing with each other to take over from her, then of course we'll no longer be taking part in these talks. We don't want to take part in something which just becomes a charade.
Today, Jeremy Corbyn labelled anyone who supports Nigel Farage and his Brexit party as Islamophobes, anti-Semites and conspiracy theorists. He says, quote, Nigel Farage's Brexit is a Brexit for conspiracy theorists, for those who see Muslims and migrants and George Soros as the enemy. Isn't that a bit rich coming from you?
Well, Nigel Farage, after 9 years of Conservative austerity, doesn't offer the solutions to anyone. This is someone who joined the Conservative Party at a young age. He's scapegoated migrants. He's called for the privatisation of our NHS. He offers cheap and easy slogans, but no solutions to the problems facing working class people across this country, whether they voted Leave or Remain, after 9 years of Conservative austerity.
But you're a man who believes that all Zionists are enemies of peace.
Well, that was a comment that I made. A video was showing me making that comment before I was an MP 5 years ago. I regret making that comment because it's an oversimplification, because actually it fails to distinguish between those Israeli citizens who are campaigning for peace, and people like Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, who are a clear barrier to peace and human rights.
But you lied. That video was captured, it was revealed a month ago, and when you were asked about it on the BBC by my colleague Andrew Neil, you said, not only did I not say that, you said that repeatedly, you said, I don't believe that. Why on earth should we believe anything you have to say when you outright lie?
Well, it's a serious point you made, Emma, and I certainly didn't lie. Let me explain. You put forward a serious point. Let me give the full answer to this. I was first asked by a newspaper in 2016 whether I'd made such a declaration. I couldn't remember making such a declaration.
It was an impassioned speech.
I asked them when I was meant to have said it and where. They couldn't tell me. Fast forward 2 years later to 2018, and your colleague Andrew Neil asked me if I made that comment in a meeting in 2016. I said, it's not my view. I said I'd been asked where I made this comment. And then a video a year after that came to light, not of 2016, where I did some speeches after I'd been to Palestine and Israel, but actually from 2014, 5 years ago, before I was even a Member of Parliament.
The enemy of the Palestinian people are Zionists. Zionism is the enemy of the peace. I do not have the time to read the entire thing.
It was a 30-second video. I think you have read the entire.
No, I've not.
The entire clip.
More of it's here. It carries on. You tell people to go and look up on the internet to find MPs, Labour MPs who are Labour Friends of Israel members, and you implore them to leave that. You keep going.
That speech, it turns out.
It's a speech. Why did you lie?
I've just explained I didn't lie.
Well, you just conveniently
I'm sure,
forgot.
Emma, that you can't remember every answer you've given to a question half a decade ago.
I could remember standing in front of a group of people and making an impassioned speech. And I'll tell you something else. I could remember it if it was my view. So are you sorry that you got caught, or are you sorry that that view was aired?
I don't use that. What I was seeking to do, as the transcript you've got shows, is distinguish between the Jewish people and other political actors. Lumping all Zionists together is clumsy and wrong.
You said what you said, you were asked about it, and you lied. And you're a man who just took if I can finish this point, you just took the Sun newspaper to court and won. You are a man who likes facts. You have a very senior position as Shadow Justice Secretary, which makes you a man of record. People would find it extremely difficult when they look this video up online, as they probably will after our interview, to think that you couldn't even remember making that speech and saying it. You lied. So why should we believe a single word that comes out of your mouth? If you let me answer if that's okay. The people who put it to me that I made this comment couldn't say what year I was meant to have made it, couldn't say where I was meant to have made it, couldn't say what context I was meant to have made it. So does that make it okay for you to forget it conveniently?
They were saying I'd made it in 2016. I couldn't remember using that turn. I couldn't remember using that turn of phrase.
You are so passionate in this video.
Half a decade ago.
You smeared an entire group of people around the world, so I ask you again, is it right for you to smear those people who support Nigel Farage because you say he's spreading lies when you've done exactly the same and you lied about not saying
Nigel Farage has made a career as a kind of snake oil salesman in politics, posing as being anti-establishment, while making out that the reason for austerity is actually to do with migration, whether it be from people from other EU countries or elsewhere. That is completely
may not be the
unfair.
case. He's not here to answer your question.
I, like the Labour Party, want to see an end to the human rights abuses visited on the Palestinian people by Netanyahu's government. I, like the Labour Party, want to see a two-state outcome.
Anything you say. This isn't an interview about the foreign policy of Israel. It's an interview about you lying.
I've explained already that I forgot a phrase that it turns out I used half a decade ago before I was an MP. I think most of your viewers could identify with, did you use a phrase in an unspecified context half a decade ago before you were in your current job? I didn't tell a falsehood, and I've explained why I wouldn't use that phrase now.
Thank you very much for your time today.